Good evening. Good evening, Phoenix. Thank you very much, Governor, for that warm introduction. She's been with me all afternoon as as I arrived here a little bit earlier today. We went over to Chandler, Arizona, just a little bit earlier to talk about some exciting news that I'll talk about in just a minute. But it's been great to be here in Arizona today. We were in Detroit for a couple of days. Talking to the auto workers and talking to some of the educators out there about our plans, or the administration's plans for education and for um, the auto industry. What we did earlier, as soon as I did arrive out at Sky Harbor, I headed over to Chandler, and we were excited to announce a $8.5 billion investment with Intel to help fund some new chip plants here in Arizona, New Mexico, Ohio, and Oregon. If you think about 4 years ago when the COVID pandemic struck our nation, and it was almost 4 years ago to this date, actually 4 years ago yesterday, that the news came down, we ended up eventually going through a supply chain issue with semiconductors. And as you know, there's probably not a phone in this room and probably not a bit of technology that's helping broadcast this across the world and, and across Arizona that doesn't use semiconductors. And we were getting dangerously low. So the decision was made to reinvest in our nation, bring some of those jobs back to our country, the semiconductor jobs, start building plants. And the Chips and Science Act that was passed um, last year has really helped with this. I still remember being out in California last summer and was out at Simi Valley and had a chance to talk to a person who was in the computer business and asked him how the Chip and Science Act was, how that was helping his industry. He said it was really doing some great things. So it was great to see this announcement today. I know the people out at Intel were very excited about that. It's going to bring jobs to Arizona. It's going to bring money to Arizona, and it's going to be a great thing for the economy of this great state of ours. Again, like I mentioned, the governor and I, we've been around here this afternoon, spent some time together, and it's great to come out here. I've spent some time here a long time ago for training. I spent time out in Tempe, time in Phoenix, so it's really great to be back out here today. Gathered here today in communities across our great nation, I stand before you with a sense of duty and purpose, ready to embark on a journey that transcends party lines and personal ambitions. A journey toward a brighter, more prosperous future for all Americans. As we gather here today, let us reflect on the challenges and opportunities that define our present and shape our collective destiny. Let us acknowledge the complexities and uncertainties that lie ahead, but let us also embrace the boundless possibilities that await us if we have the courage and the determination to seize them. At the heart of our national discourse lies the imperative of education, the cornerstone of our society, the foundation upon which our democracy rests. Our schools are not just buildings, they are crucibles in which the future of our nation is forged, where young minds are nurtured and the seeds of progress are sown. Yet, despite the pivotal role that education plays in shaping the destiny of our nation, we find ourselves confronted by systemic inequalities and persistent challenges that threaten to undermine its effect and impact. It's time for us to prioritize education spending, recognizing that investment in our educational infrastructure is an investment in our collective future. Think about it today out in Chandler when we talked about this investment with Intel. there's going to there are school children here in Phoenix. There are school children throughout the country that are in school today that will one day occupy those semiconductor plants, and they will occupy it with the knowledge provided by a teacher. You know, this entails not merely allocating financial resources, but adopting an approach that addresses the multifaceted needs of educational institutions, from modernizing infrastructure and enhancing technology to promoting innovative practices and providing adequate support for our educators. We must pursue a comprehensive strategy that ensures equal access to quality education for all students, regardless of their social economic background or geographic location. It should not matter where you live or what your economic status is. You are entitled to an education in this country. And under my administration, you always will be entitled to an education in this country. Yet, all I've talked about here tonight, yet none of this is possible without our dedicated teachers. They are truly the unsung heroes who shape the minds of the next generation, instilling them with the values of hard work, compassion, and resilience. It's time to honor their invaluable contribution by advocating for substantial pay raises, professional development, and the resources necessary to excel in their vital roles as mentor, guides, and champions of knowledge. It is. You know, education is so important. Education lays the future for our country and the world. And we must have this generation ready. Excuse me. You know, there was so much talk about what we're teaching in schools and what textbooks we're using. And it just, what bottom line of it is, teachers owe the students that come to their schools. And you think about it, and I'm married to a teacher and proud of it. And she does a phenomenal job. She's a pre-K instructional lead in Fort Worth, Texas. But you think about it, at 7:15, 7:30 in the morning, they're dropping off their most prized possessions. More valuable than a car, more valuable than a home, more valuable than anything in their life. And they're entrusting an individual to take custody of that child for 8 hours and hope that when they pick them up in the afternoon, that they're better educated than they were 8 hours earlier. It is that hope. And what they teach is important. An educator owes our students the ABCs, the one, two, threes, the good, the bad, the ugly of history. Why are we trying to sanitize our history? Yes, this country did bad things. I cannot stand up here tonight and tell you this country did everything perfect. It did not. But if we don't teach them the bad things that we did as a nation and the mistakes we made, they are destined to repeat them. They are destined to repeat them. So we owe them that education that will pave the way for the future. You know, transitioning to the economic realm, we are confronted by the challenges of unemployment, a scourge that threatens the livelihoods of millions, sowing the seeds of despair and uncertainty in communities across our nation. To address this, we must pursue comprehensive unemployment reform, encompassing not only short term relief measures, but also long term strategies aimed at fostering economic resilience, promoting workforce development, and fostering entrepreneurship. By investing in job training programs, supporting small businesses, and implementing policies that promote innovation and entrepreneurship, we can empower individuals to adapt and thrive in a changing economy, building a more resilient workforce and ensuring economic prosperity for all. 4 years ago, 4 years ago, almost yesterday, this country was shocked by something it hasn't seen in a generation. A pandemic hit our country. Unemployment went to 15% practically overnight. The government had to do what it had to do to protect our economy. Our economy was on the brink. We had to pump money into the economy. People had to continue living, paying their bills, doing what they needed to do to survive. Millions were laid off. Millions were laid off. Now, 4 years later, the pandemic is in the rearview mirror. Most of us have returned to work. And but there is that select few who took advantage of unemployment and never returned to the workforce. They found ways to stay unemployed. And I will tell you this, I've been on unemployment. I hated it. I hated every Thursday morning when that unemployment report came across, and I knew that I was one of those numbers. And I knew that the thing I needed to do was to get out there, hit those streets, get a job. And the best thing that can happen to a person, and I know it's not the same as it was when I was growing up many years ago, but is when you get that paycheck. That's a true sign of your well-being. It's a true sign of your hard work. And I know it's not such a big thrill when they used to give you the paycheck. Now it's a direct deposit that happens overnight. But it's still a great thing. And enhanced unemployment, it's going to make unemployment a job. You're going to be required to have 5 job interviews a week to get continued benefits. That should encourage anyone to get out there and get back in the workforce. And you think about the jobs that are available. You look at the latest BLS numbers that come out. There are 1.6 jobs available for every person in this country. In this room here tonight, 1.6 jobs available. You could walk out of this room here tonight, walk down the street in Phoenix, and you could get you a job. There's no reason you couldn't get you a job. So it's time for us to get back to work. Enhanced unemployment will ensure that does happen. Finally, let's cast our gaze upon the borders to the realm of foreign affairs. A domain fraught with complexity, uncertainty, and competing interests in an interconnected world characterized by geopolitical rivalries, transitional threats, and emerging challenges. The imperative of effective and principled foreign policy has never been more pronounced. It is incumbent upon us to pursue a foreign policy agenda that is rooted in the principles of diplomacy, cooperation, and mutual respect. By fostering collective dialogue, strengthening international alliances, and upholding democratic values and human rights, we can advocate for national interests while also contributing to a more peaceful, stable, and prosperous world for all nations. There are candidates who are running for president who want to get out of NATO. I should say candidate, maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't say candidates, but candidate that wants to get out of NATO. Treating NATO as if it's some kind of country club. Treating NATO as if it's a place where you pay your dues. Well, it's not. It's an alliance that's been forged in history. And I will make you this guarantee here tonight. My administration will never, ever turn its back on NATO or the alliance. Think back to September the 11th. And there is a clause, or there's an article in the NATO treaty, if you ever read it, called Article 5. And that simply states, an attack on one member of NATO is an attack on all. September 11th, 2001, Article 5 of the NATO treaty was put in effect. The only time in our nation's history, in the world history, that ever was put in effect. NATO had our back. It is time for us to have NATO's back. We talk about again about paying dues like it's a grift. Let's look at the numbers, quite frankly, here. We spend $850 billion on defense every year. Europe, they spend $380 billion on defense. The membership dues, if you want to call it that, I don't call it that, but it's a commitment that the world leaders made uh, at, at the NATO summit, is a percentage of your GDP, your gross domestic product, which is basically right now at around 2%. You pledge you're going to put 2% of your GDP in defense spending. That's the so-called membership dues. That it's not a dues, but that's what it takes to run NATO. And again, you have my commitment here tonight. As long as I'm in that fabulous place up in DC, we are not going to back away from our allies. I hear every time they come over and they come for bilateral meetings, you hear them say, "Well, you're back, but for how long?" And I'm saying, we're back for good. We're back for good. You know, and in conclusion, my fellow Americans, the challenges before us are great, but so too is our resolve. Together, let us embrace the challenges before us with unity, purpose, and determination. Let us build a brighter future for generations to come, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans united in our common pursuit of a more perfect union. And I want to close with this. There's this another Texan that occupied that great White House up in Washington. About 25 years ago, he had this painting in the Oval Office. And it's painted by a gentleman by the name of Tom Lee. And Tom Lee talks about, when he describes the painting, it's called Near El Paso. And he talks about how him and his wife, Sarah, they live on the east side of the mountain. For it's living on the east side of the mountain that you see the sunrise of the day ahead and not the sunset of the day behind. So many of the people in this campaign are talking about the sunset of this nation. I'm talking about the sunrise that's about to happen in our country. My friends, I truly believe here tonight that we as a country live on the east side of the mountain and our best days are ahead of us. May God bless you. May God bless our troops. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Phoenix. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you very, very much.